Okay, so here we are to start the third episode of a new European Bauhaus, Triennale Milano bilateral meetings with the European cultural representations in Milano. Hi everyone, my name is Marco Sammicheli and I'm the International Relations Chief Officer of Triennale Milano. Since its foundation, Triennale has hosted the research and the languages of the international creative community, and since 1933, it has been part of the BIE, the Bureau International des Expositions in Paris, where every 3 years it organizes an international exhibition, which with a system of national pavilions presents the most relevant innovations in the fields of architecture, urban planning, design, and new media. In attempt to pursue this target, Triennale Milano listened to the message of the European Commission that in October 2020 launched the project of a new European Bauhaus, a movement of thought, a platform, a call to participation that aims to involve cultural institutions, universities, associations, and the widest possible pool of citizens. For the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, the themes of social and economic development, investment in a future based on environmental sustainability, and the values of each community are the result of the networking of complex and widespread knowledge systems such as design, architecture, demography, new technologies, and study of a renewable energy. These are the topics that the new European Bauhaus must promote to tackle the environmental crisis of the planet. Triennale Milano has decided to create a series of digital conferences in collaboration with the diplomatic and cultural representatives of European countries, and that it has academic relations with, organized exhibition or made publication for almost a century, and has entered into collaboration agreements. So starting from last November, through a digital platform and format which is open and free of charge, Triennale is inviting curators, professors, scholars, designers, and museum directors to think about the theme proposed by the European Commission, to share ideas, comments, proposals, and practices at a very delicate moment in European and world history where it is necessary to rethink the tools, the approaches, and the dynamics of cultural exchange, exhibitions, and value creation in creative process. I'm very happy to inaugurate this third episode, which is in collaboration with the Consul General of the Netherlands in Milano, and also in collaboration with the Dutch Embassy in Rome. Now I leave the floor with the, I see there's problem at the moment. I would love to leave the floor to the Consul General to address the greeting and welcome all the guests from the Netherlands. Please, General Consul.
So there I am, I think. Can you hear me, Marco?
We can hear you and see you very well.
Very good. I'm happy to hear that. Well, good evening, everybody. I understand that there is quite a big audience, very international, all over the world. So that is really very inspiring. My name is Johan Verboom. I'm Consul General of the Netherlands in Milan since more than 3 years, and I am enjoying very much my life and my work in Milan, in Italy. Thank you very much, Marco Sammicheli, for organizing this important series about Bauhaus. And as you mentioned, of course, it is based on the presentation, the statements of Ursula von der Leyen about the new European Bauhaus. We have to do things differently, as she has made her statement. And I think I'm very happy that today we have the opportunity to look at this subject from a Dutch perspective. Well, Bauhaus, it was founded in Germany, but over the years it has inspired a very big group of artists, of designers in the Netherlands. And last year, 2019, it was the jubileum, 100 years ago, that Bauhaus was founded in Germany. And it was a reason for many activities, publication, talks, exhibitions in the Netherlands. Many people were involved, so that was quite a big thing. In the speech of Mrs. von der Leyen, she said that we have to bridge between the world of science and technology and the world of art and culture. And she calls for a new European Green Deal combining good design with sustainability. And well, we are very happy about that statement, because this is also what we want with the creative industries in the Netherlands. We want them to be part of the solutions for the future. We want them to be involved in societal challenges. At the same time, I have to say that the new European Bauhaus, the title she has chosen, also led to a petition signed by some of our leading cultural institutions who wanted to express their concern because of this title, because for them it was not an inclusive title, because it is related to a predominantly Western background, and it's too much linked to our colonial past and industrial capitalism. So for those people, the title refers to, well, mistakes which we have made in our past, and it led to quite some discussions. Well, maybe part of this discussion will also come back tonight. I'm very proud that that you have well selected 4 experts from the Netherlands, Marco, and I would like to briefly introduce the 4 of them. They are outstanding experts. First of all, Jeroen van der Einde. He is a professor in product and interior design at Artes Institute of Arts in Arnhem. He wrote extensively about Bauhaus, especially in relation to education. And his recent book is called Designing for Precarious Citizens, Building on the Bauhaus Legacy. And in this book, he links the ideals of the Bauhaus to research on the living conditions of vulnerable groups in society today. Very relevant. Then secondly, we have Mrs. Madeleine van Lennep. She knows Milan very well because she comes here regularly, especially for the Design Week. And she has always worked at the intersection of cultural policy, visual arts, design, and cultural heritage in the Netherlands. In the past, she was deputy director of the Mondrian Fund, which is our national fund for visual arts. And since 2013, since 7 years, she has been the director of the Association of Dutch Designers, BNO. Also, Madeleine has been quite active as a participant in the 2 previous meetings you have mentioned. Thirdly, I would like to introduce Marina Otero Vertier, who is the Director of Research at the Het Nieuwe Institute, the new institute. And she's also the head of the Social Design Master at the Design Academy in Eindhoven. And on the occasion of the jubileum of 100 years Bauhaus, which I just mentioned, Het Nieuwe Instituut transformed into a Neuhaus, and which was a temporary academy for, as they call it, modern human knowledge. For a period of 4 months, they created an ever-evolving learning environment to perform the Neuhaus program of modern human knowledge. And by the way, Het Nieuwe Instituut was also the curator for the Dutch pavilion at the Triennale last year, which was, I think, very successful. And then, last but not least, I would like to introduce Mr. Timo de Rijk. He was before a professor in design, culture and society at the Delft University, where, by the way, I did my education myself, and at the Leiden University. Currently, he is the director of the Design Museum in Den Bosch. And the ambition of his museum is to show the influence of design on our daily lives and to highlight the cultural meaning of design. He is currently working on an essay about Bauhaus for the new yearbook Dutch Design of the Association of Dutch Designers, BNO, where Madeleine is the director. So 4 Dutch experts, they all have huge knowledge of the Bauhaus, and but each of them from a very different angle. So that sounds very promising, I think. And with that, I would like to give the floor back to you, Marco. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Consul General, for the introduction, and we should immediately start to our conversation. Also because we don't know yet what the new European Bauhaus will be, what kind of shape, what kind of platform will be. Of course, we all read the statement of Ursula von der Leyen, and we know that it's going to be a bridge between disciplines, between communities, in order to accelerate a process of discussion, innovation in different directions. Well, I mean, if I read through the lines, she said, bridge between the world of science and technology and the world of art and culture, good design and sustainability. And also what I want to share before listening to our guest is that the European Bauhaus will be rolled out in 3 steps. The first is a design phase to explore ideas and shape the movement. And in this moment, the expertise involved are designers, architects, digital experts, scientists, and entrepreneurs. Actually, what we did miss in the previous 2 episodes, and also in this one, that we never included entrepreneurs. And also when we talk about design, it's quite important to listen to that part and to involve on them in this conversation. And the second step will be starting 5 new European Bauhaus projects in different EU member states. And the last phase will be spreading the ideas. But let's start with Madeleine van Leppen. And my question is that the European Commission statement is including design and the legacy of Bauhaus in a sort of a political action. So first I want to hear what was your first impression and your reaction as managing director of the Association of Dutch Design, please. We can't hear you yet.
I have to unmute myself, and so I did. Dear all, hello. Thank you, Marco, for your invitation and for your question. Let me first, before I answer it, introduce the BNO very briefly. We are one of the biggest design communities in the Netherlands and quite special also worldwide, because we unite and we help professional designers in all fields at all stages of their careers and however they are organized, as a student, as a solo, as an agency, etc. We provide knowledge, inspiration and growth. We assist with expert advice. We match designers and their agencies with peers and other relevant professionals. And we serve as the designer's voice vis-à-vis clients and politics. We communicate through various media on and offline, and here you see the image of the already launched Dutch Designers magazine and the Dutch Designers yearbook, which is about to be there on 1 year of Dutch design, and I would say a very special year, of course, of Dutch design. Yeah, on your question, Marco, what was my first impression and my reaction? I was surprised to start with, and above all, of course, extremely happy with the speech and the intentions of Mrs. von der Leyen. For many years, we work on raising public and political awareness on the potential of design. And that is an ongoing mission, since design even today is still too often only associated with more autonomous art forms or high-end luxury goods. And so we advocate the power of design in a more broader sense all the time. And I think one of the best ways to do so is to show specific evidence, because first you have to inform and to raise awareness, and then you have to seduce. We do so in different ways, in collaboration with many parties. Already years ago, we published a series, Crossover Works, notice the name. And I want to refer to the project IDOLS, which is also dedicated to multi-stakeholder projects and issues. We have this honorary member, Connie Bakker, with whom we cooperate. She's responsible for research and education at Technical University Delft as professor on design for sustainability and circular economy. We partner with the organization, I hope you all know it, What Design Can Do. They are reaching out worldwide with their conferences and with design challenges on all the big issues of our time. And there is this very active organization, CIRCO, which works on educating and matching the industry with designers to reach more circularity in processes and businesses. And well, all this is aimed at increasing the impact of design on society and on the planet. So I can't wait to work on the invitation Mrs. von der Leyen has made. And yeah, I would be very glad when Holland, as still, I wouldn't say leading, but very innovative country considering design and the creative sector, would have a seat at the table, or would have the opportunity to be one of the 5 hubs to which the project is aimed.
Thank you, Madeleine. And I go already to the second question because of your position and your experience. I mean, in the new European Bauhaus platform, the European Commission is considering adding disciplines such as demography, science of materials, and digital innovation. Let's sum up and generalize like this. At least 2 of them, I mean, the materials and the digital innovations are already part of many education programs. According to your experience, what kind of other contribution or expertise could reinforce this project?
Yeah. Well, when we talk about wicked problems and about societal change and also about how to save the planet, of course, we talk about almost every discipline. And so it depends very much on the issue itself you want to solve or you want to bring further, which disciplines you think you should involve. I think many kinds of expertise are needed, but maybe above all 2, I should say, complementary disciplines, philosophy and mathematics. Data, of course, is essential in solving complex problems, but we also learned that disciplines as philosophy, ethics, sociology, behavioral sciences, anthropology must be taken into account very seriously. And I believe creativity is key, but that the utmost creativity can be reached by good teamwork between various disciplines. So I think it's very much a matter of good teamwork and good casting. And let me finish maybe, Marco, by, if you allow me, with 2 cases which are typically Dutch, and that is water related, but meant to be to have a global impact. Water as leverage, rewarded by the Dutch Design Foundation with the Best Commissioning Awards. It's about areas where water is seen as a risk, and this project sees a positive role for water in fast-growing cities in India, Bangladesh, and Indonesia. And secondly, I would like to mention the project you maybe might know by now, but a very good example, and that is the ocean cleanup from Boyan Slat. I don't need to say more, I guess. Also rewarded by a Dutch Design Foundation. Both multi-stakeholder problems and multi-stakeholder solutions.
Thank you very much, Madeleine, for not just answering the question, but open the conversation to the real topic, which is how to participate, how to contribute, and what are the other expertises. You mentioned ethics, you mentioned behavioral science, but I also think that philosophy and maths to understand data, it's quite important. I mean, here in Triennale, we are working on the upcoming international exhibition in 2022, where we already announced the title, and it also relates to the fact that knowledge is something very difficult to dictate and to formulate. The title is Unknown Unknowns. And this fact that what we don't know, it's something really important to consider. But with the Dutch Design Yearbook, you are, as the Consul General was mentioning, one of the contributors is Timo de Rech, not only as a director of the Den Bosch Design Museum, but also as a scholar, as a researcher. So I'd like to give the floor to Timo de Rech and ask what's the topic and what's the kind of contribution you elaborated for the magazine.
Well, it's a reaction to, of course, to the von der Leyen lecture, and it's called Liebe Ursula. It's almost a kind of amorous start a letter, of course. Maybe I may respond to the question you asked, Madeleine van Lennep. And the first thing I thought when I read the lecture of Ursula von der Leyen was, and then of course I have to mention that we had 2019, and the Consul General was already talking about it, that when we were celebrating the Bauhaus, the 100 year, the centennial in Germany and the Netherlands, probably also in Italy. And in a way, I was irritated by references to the Bauhaus, because, you know, it's quite easy to be, well, trying to be innovative when you refer to the Bauhaus and you sound progressive. And a lot of people I heard in 2019 talk about the Bauhaus, well, that was a good school and we should, you know, redo it or whatever. And then there was that von der Leyen statement, and I suddenly thought, well, once again, a new Bauhaus, why should we do that? And then I started reading, and that the first thing, and maybe the only thing that really struck me, and not the only thing, but that was very important, she was sincere, she was honest, she had a lot of integrity about asking designers, you know, engineers together, maybe not in an explicit, exactly the same way as the Bauhaus, but in a more metaphorical way, but at the same time referencing to, you know, what happened 100 years ago, and in a multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary way, asking both artists, engineers, etc. And I thought, this woman really wants to achieve something, and she asks our world at the table. And the first thing that happened, or in an official way in the Netherlands, was, well, a petition maybe. There are two participants here at the table who were very critical about, well, the name and the title of her statement. Let me put it quite directly. I thought it was a little bit undiplomatic. I mean, on the one hand side, I understood that, you know, maybe the Bauhaus, of course, there can be a lot of criticism about the Bauhaus 100 years ago. It was completely white, it was completely male, etc., etc. Jeroen knows much more about it than I do. At the same time, it was, well, it was maybe more or less like the Dutch football team. You know, once in a while we have a great generation of soccer players. Well, you might know that as an Italian. And well, 3 times in history, we reached the World Cup final, and 3 times we lost. Not that because we were good, but because, not good, but because we thought we were very good, and we started to complain to the referee or question the pitch or whatever. I would suppose that we don't do that. I would suppose that we shake the hand with von der Leyen and tell her maybe, you know, at a coffee, well, the Bauhaus was maybe not that good as you remember it, but we go along with you, and we take your hand when we want to be at the table, and we want to, we want to cooperate with you, because I think this is a historical moment. I really think von der Leyen put up a historical moment for us, and we should shake that hand. I really believe so. So that's the first thing I want to tell you, to all of you. The important ingredients of her speech, and that was why I thought she was sincere and honest. And I thought, no doubt she has spoken to a lot of experts to put it on paper. This was not a superficial essay. At first, she was addressing that we need to think as a system, or at least changing the system. Many people will tell you that. I mean, that's nothing new, but we have to think clearly about what that system is. I mean, that system, we don't live in a system. We live in a kind of wild, jungle-like idea with all kind of actors. So how are we going to change that? We need people at the table, designers at the table, who understand that. And that's not about multidisciplinary. I think we need to invent or educate, I'm looking at Jeroen already, new designers who understand what that system could be about, that new system. That's what we are going to design. So that, I think that's very important. There has to be a new designer created, a new designer educated. That's the first, well, I think, major remark I want to make. So we're looking at education. We need to educate people, maybe who start all over again with new kind of knowledge, who are, freed from any artistic references we think still are very important, but think it all over. And that's very difficult. I mean, we need people who are willing to do that. So that's the first thing. It's about system, but it's about very strange, wild, hybrid kind of, maybe organic kind of system we're dealing with. We have to redesign, reinvent the designer we want at the table. And maybe finally for now, but of course we can talk about it. She said something, Ursula von der Leyen said something very remarkable. She is asking for a new kind of aesthetics. We tend to forget that. We're talking about a lot of important things, engineering, technology, etc., which is all true. She's also talking about aesthetics, and that we need also a new kind of aesthetics. And I think that she is completely right. I was in a similar meeting this afternoon, of course, with less intelligent people than you are, but they were talking about, that was a very good remark. It has to be about hope. And maybe we have to design together a kind of grammar of hope, something like that. I mean, until now, the only, aesthetics about circularity or sustainability is about, the grammar or the aesthetics of what the greenwashing or recycling, which is all, I must say, utterly boring. We need something that gives also people who are not involved with our discipline, we need to give hope. So designers have to think, how does that new world look like? How does it communicate the new kind of way we want to live? Because that goes hand in hand with that idea, of course. Well, maybe I said too much until now.
No, thank you. Thank you very much, Timo. Also because you started sharing the fact that there was a lack of diplomacy in this act of immediately reply with a letter. And then you are also referring to the fact that we must be able to and we have the courage to write a new grammar of hope. Before giving the word to Jeroen van der Heijden, I would love to also go back to an aspect that you shared in your speech now. It is how to create a new design education. Mm-hmm. And also because you've been a professor and you're also now directing a cultural institutions. Like what can be the contribution in this sense of a museum? Because nowadays, I mean, for example, here in Italy, due to the pandemic, every museum is closed, so we can't go to museums, and this happened for the past almost 9 months. On and off, the museums were open and closed.
Well, of course, I don't have one solution because we're dealing with a lot of problems at the same time. But suppose that and in a way that already sometimes happens. But suppose you teach designers with the idea, for instance, that they don't buy stuff, but that that you can hire stuff, that you can have subscriptions. Of course, that's a nice idea, that you lease products, you can lease buildings. The idea that you can hire a part of a building for a small time and then give it back and then renovate it or innovate it. How do you deal with those kind of circumstances? Of course, already some designers started experimenting with that, trying to understand what a subscription means and not the ownership of a car, for instance. And I think that is still a very large part of knowledge that has to be understood, especially for designers. I think Rem Koolhaas once said, we're of course very proud of Rem Koolhaas, you might understand that. Koolhaas once said, well, we're talking about the smart city all the time, but at the table there's no architect. And I think I agree with him. The design world has something to offer, but has to renew itself at the same time to be at the table of something that's happening right now. So I don't have a solution. Maybe Jeroen can tell a little bit, because he's actually working 40 or more hours a week in education. But I think there can a lot be done in education. And I don't have one solution, but you have to rethink, for instance, ownership.
Thank you very much, Timo de Rech. And now we have to go to Jeroen van den Heide, and also because it was called many times during the previous speeches. So what was so relevant? What was the big impact of this school that has been recalled to the present by the European Commission? You as a researcher and spend a lot of time on the legacy and on the memory of this school, why it is so important and why it is so also provoking, the fact that, oh, not another Bauhaus. In the design business, we used to say not another chair during a design week or a design fair. Why not another Bauhaus?
Yeah, in the first place, thank you to having me here in this very relevant debate. And it will be not a surprise that I want to start with a historical perspective on the Bauhaus, and then to go to the current situation. And I want to share some pictures, because all that talking heads is sometimes quite boring, I think. So maybe it's better to look to some inspiring pictures. So we have to remember that Bauhaus existed for only 14 years. And the Bauhaus was a revolutionary model for art education, related to the radical societal, economic, and cultural developments of that time. And in my opinion, the Bauhaus died as a young, talented, and maybe misunderstood hero. A kind of main character in a spectacular revolution about art and design education. And with the death of the Bauhaus, the myth of an art school arose. Those who die early have an eternal use, you can say, that can be used to color every kind of future. So many artists, designers, architects, art teachers, directors of art academies rely on the idea of the Bauhaus. But in fact, it's very hard to describe what this school was in essence. The Bauhaus was a barrel of contradictions, a clash of artistic and pedagogical views. The school consists elements of expressionism, constructivism, functionalism, even Dada and Surrealism. Teachers taught subjective, intuitive, and mystical approaches for artistic expression, alongside rational, objective, and scientific methods for art and design. There were traditional and craft-based techniques for painting, weaving, and ceramics were used in addition to experimental photography and industrial production methods. And the Bauhaus was an art school, but as well as a political enclave, a utopian community, and admired and criticized design style. It was progressive in art and design ideas, however, conservative in, for instance, the position of women in society. For instance, the architecture department was forbidden for female students, and there were exceptions, however, mostly related to love affairs between teachers and students. And yes, it was masculine or Eurocentric and have influenced art education from the United States to Japan. And the school was a forerunner of a system that causes many of today's problems. And as Einstein said, the famous quote, I think everyone knows this, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. You could say in the end, Bauhaus is so comprehensive that everyone can easily rely on some of its characteristics. For everyone, there is the opportunity to put the Bauhaus in front of his own ideology. In 2009, so that was the 19-year celebration of the Bauhaus, Philip Oswald was director of the Bauhaus Dessau Foundation, have tried to describe the original intentions, ideas, and methods of the Bauhaus. And I will quote him: as a radical experiment in the breaking down of boundaries, in the decategorization and in consolidation. No metaphor describes it more aptly than that of space in flux, in an intellectual sense as well. Bauhaus is maximum dynamic, instability, change. The Bauhaus was a laboratory for the exploration of a new realm of possibility that took shape with the new knowledge, the new technologies, and the new ways of thinking that were emerging at that time. End of quote. But despite these dynamics, constant changes, and conflicting views within the Bauhaus community, according to this Oswald, the school was held together by a common goal, a common vision to improve the quality of everyday life in the present and to make it affordable for all. And I think 100 years after the foundation of the Bauhaus, the radical experiment and the decategorization is still relevant to face the societal challenges related to the ambitions of the Green Deal. However, the challenge now is not to merge an outdated art school with more modern design education and to promote a new unity between art and technology, which was the underlying ideology of the Bauhaus. Nowadays, we have to merge art and design with science and technology and with politics and civil society. Bauhaus was also an attempt to reposition art and design in society, not as isolated creative domains tied to historical traditions. The design community acknowledged for a long time their important role in society. And in the end, culture is the result of human design processes, and the Green Deal requires, as mentioned already, a de-disciplined, or you can call it a multi-inter or transdisciplinary approach. In a sense, we have to collaborate between scientists, politicians, and civilians. And more than ever, design could play, I think, the integrating, intermediating, and connecting role in these transdisciplinary cooperations. And I see science primarily the force to recognize and analyze the problems. Politics are the main force for decision-making processes. And design is, in essence, the force to frame and reframe, to question current states, and to offer new visions, alternative approaches, and concrete solutions based on the skills to visualize and to make tangible, preferable futures. And as the French philosopher Bruno Latour says about the specific skills of artists, and I quote him, it's their skills which are specific when they seriously deal with the same topic as the religious, the scientists, and civic society, because we are too deprived of moves, abilities forms, and feelings in all the sense of aesthetics. Art is important because of artists' skills and how they can be used in collaboration with scientists and civic society." End of quote. I'm very convinced that artists and designers could make tangible the ambitions of the Green Deal to make a convincing story for a sustainable planet. And it's already happening for many years. And I'm very proud to be part of a research group which is called Practicing Possible Futures at Artes University of the Arts. And what you see here is one of the results of a research project together with students. So we talk about redesigning the educational programs for designers. And I think we see here an example of it. It's a result of the research project, and you see all the stakeholders in this process with 4 universities of technology, 2 other University of Applied Sciences, a lot of designers, and a lot of societal partners, all to work on what you saw, the jacket made out of mycelium. Because the jacket you see is in a way our dream. It looks like a reality, but it is not yet there. It looks a kind of reality, but in fact it's more a symbol to mobilize the scientific, creative, economic and political forces we need for making this dream come true. And there are so many comparable initiatives already. Luc also, for instance, already mentioned what design can do edition about the climate change challenge. Hundreds of initiatives worldwide dealing with ideas, at least to mitigate the effect of climate change. It is the role of politicians to recognize, acknowledge, support, and create the conditions to realize the most promising ideas. So I don't see the Bauhaus as a top-down initiative for the Green Deal. For me, it's the acknowledgement that many of us, designers, artists, architects, scientists, engineers, are already working on it. And we are with many, so let's join our forces. And that seems to me the most important questions. How do we design the cooperative processes in a European context that is still strongly national-oriented and bureaucratic organized? And finally, what's in the name? I agree the new Bauhaus have positive as much as negative connotation and rely too much on a tradition that excludes too many people, too many ideas and values, and the non-human. In fact, the Green Deal is not a bad name. However, we have to be explicit about our ambitions. So make it the Green Deal for Spaceship Earth, to remember another hero of design history, more related to the challenges we are facing today and tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ron, for many reasons. Also because you, with the historical introduction, you remembered us the mythology of Bauhaus is full of shadows. There were a lot of strength, but also a lot of things that didn't work. But I also appreciate the fact that this necessity of cooperation that was in a characteristic of the Bauhaus platform, it is also very necessary nowadays. So the question you raised, how do we design a cooperation process across nations in a European continent that is already quite where the relations, not only cultural, but political, social, and economic relations are often quite at the center of very difficult debate. And in this sense, we need to work on the diplomacy and the collaboration and the cooperation would reinforce these relations before even imagine our platform can be. But thank you very much. And I also would love to ask Marina Otero Verzier, her point of view also, because all of us, we've been living in a continent where, thanks to projects such as Erasmus or many other platforms, everything seemed easier, and we've been already very used to work in cooperations. And before pandemics also, there were many appointments like Biennale, Triennales, where all the community could meet and establish relations. But it seems that with these schemes, these networks, they did not really work, or they work only in parts. So I would love to hear from you the first impression, and also what was your, as a member of the Dutch design community, when you also read the letter with the objection to the term of the new European Bauhaus. We can't hear you. You should unmute yourself. No, we can't hear you now. Okay, now we can hear you, Marina.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm saying that thank you so much for the invitation. That is a pleasure to be part of this conversation. And yeah, I think I agree with many things that have been said. In my perspective, though, first of all, to say that the new institute, represented by its general and artistic director, Guus Beumer, signed a letter that had certain concerns around the title of the new European Bauhaus. But the reason is something that has a longer trajectory. As the Consul General has expressed, we in 2019 celebrated the anniversary of the Bauhaus, organizing the Neuhaus, this academy for more than human knowledge. So in a way, we were already celebrating the history and the legacy of the Bauhaus, and at the same time, recognizing the need to reassess and bring perhaps other knowledges, other actors, and other methodologies, other forms of learning that were not part, as Jeroen has explained, in the original Bauhaus. And that's why we also changed the name. So that is a little bit the context. And since then, we have been working in a trajectory taken from this idea of what will be the more than human knowledge, what is that we need to learn in order to face contemporary problems of design. And that has evolved in a series of projects connected to, for instance, the Venice Pavilion, the upcoming Venice Pavilion, who is named Who Are We? Actually, what is that we, when we talk about collectivity, for instance, when we talk about Europe, who is that we are addressing? We are developing different multiple platforms to create even legal frameworks for the cooperation of human and more than human bodies. We have been working on burnout, also as a way of like how to think about design, architecture, and cultural practices in a way they are sustainable for the bodies of those who practice it, but also for the planet. And next week we have a symposium, and this is gonna link with my next point, that is called The Coming South, thinking about the inequalities between the North and the South that are at a geopolitical level happening in the planet, but also at many different levels, even at the local level. So my point when I read about this initiative, not only as a member of the new institute, as a person who has been living in the Netherlands for a long time already, but also as a Spaniard who hadn't been living in Spain for 10 years, but still, I was happy, as Madeleine, for instance, have said, that design was recognized as a force that can participate in the transformation of society. And we always say that, for instance, at the new institute, the world and even Europe has been designed and therefore could be redesigned. So for me, that was a very important aspect. The question is also who will find within Europe, but also in the many relations and territories that are in constant connection with Europe and are inseparable from Europe, who feels identified with Bauhaus. And for instance, as a Spaniard, I'm not. And I recognize the value of the legacy of the Bauhaus, but at the same time, I don't think that is something that gets all the Europeans together. I recognize its value as a cultural worker who has been living in the Netherlands and now works in an institution that is the custodian of an archive that has the works of the Bauhaus, and I recognize the value. But I think, so going to what Timo said, I actually think that the letter was diplomatic because it was representing the privilege that a place like the Netherlands has in its position in Europe and also in design, and at the same time recognizing that from that position they can bring forces of solidarity, alliances, and recognition to other bodies, to other territories that might not be in that position. And that made me feel proud of being a European and also being a practitioner living in the Netherlands. And I think that's how many received that. I think it was a healthy conversation that I was proud that was happening in the Netherlands, instead of being comfortable only with the idea of design as a selling product, but design as a practice that is also a political practice. And if we put it in that sense, then how we have to put who should be in the table. For me, also the question of being in the table that I think also Timo brought is extremely relevant. And it seems that now with this initiative, the designers are on the table. But for me, the question actually will be, should we be in that table, or the role of design now is design the table itself where we want to be seated? What is the type of conversations we think we should create? And especially because it's a celebration that design is not positioned in this initiative as an object, a market-oriented practice, but at the same time, it's still thinking about the idea of progress. And we always say, for instance, at the New Institute, that innovation is always connected to conflict. So we have to be aware of like any type of innovation, idea of progress will bring inevitably forms of conflict associated to that. So we have to be aware of how to design that table. Is that a new design, European design parliament? How should we organize? Who should we have a voice there? What is the role of design if it's not necessarily this very positivist approach based on like, you know, only data or factual forms, but perhaps, and I think what the new generations teaching at the Design Academy, what I heard from them is that they are also interested not only in technological developments and solutions, but also in forms of care and effects and forms of vulnerability, forms of empathy. And these questions, I guess, are really important also to design the new Europe. So that will be my little contribution to the conversation.
Thank you, Marina. Thank you very much. It's not little at all, because you mentioned that we probably need to redesign Europe, and the role of designers also as not just to sit around the table, but to design a table that will probably have different row of seats and different, and we are also need to be advocates of conflicts, of soft conflicts that will in somehow foster the conversation and move the politician to the idea that probably working with scientists is not just, you know, the final moment before taking the decision, but it's to start the conversation already with them, because it's not how to reply to questions, but which questions we need to formulate in order to sort of make an X-ray of this situation. I also appreciate it very much, and this is going to be the one of the topics of the next episodes of Bauhaus, New European Bauhaus, especially with the Spanish and the Portuguese episode, like countries that they didn't have any close affection to the Bauhaus. tradition. At the same time, we open the chat so people can formulate questions. And while we wait for this question, I asked the Consul General also, because in many occasions we refer to politics, to diplomacy, and who better than you can also express an opinion about what can be the role of politicians and politics in general in this kind of debate. Consul General, you need to unmute your.
Yes, sorry. Yes. There I am, I think. Huh? Yeah, thank you, Marco. Well, it's an honor for me to react to these very inspiring, I have to say, statements. And what I hear especially is that that the solution should be found in inclusiveness and in education. The new European Bauhaus is a very historical moment, I have heard, and we have to see how design can better support solving the problems we are facing, being it in the society, being it in the environment, all kinds of problems. And if we focus on education, I think we have to look at universities, at academies. We have to look even at the secondary schools at all different ages, because the experts and the decision makers of tomorrow, they are today still in class, in school. So let's inform them, let's educate them. And some very interesting things I heard in the statements were, for example, that we have, or that's how I heard it, we have to look for eye-catching projects like the ocean cleanup of Boyan Slat. Boyan Slat is a very young guy. He's so young, he looks like he just finished university, but he has done some very eye-catching projects. It's a very historical moment we have heard, which Ursula von der Leyen has created. We need new designers. We have to create new designers, again, in education, who are at the table when decisions are taken. I think that's very important. And then the statement which we just heard, I think is very beautiful. Designers at the table, or should they design the table? And that so to give them even at that level say, and I think that is very true. One last thing I also heard in that respect is the diversity was highlighted of Bauhaus. It's not a homogeneous movement, but also a couple of weaknesses. And Bauhaus is very interesting as a source of inspiration, as a form of inspiration, but it's also good to be aware of these weaknesses. So yeah, that is my reply at this stage. Thank you, Marco.
Thank you very much, Consul General, and thanks to all the guests that have been participating to this panel. We were not having questions from the audience, even though a lot of people are still connecting and following us. For the past 60 minutes, we've been going through different statements and points of view and positions, and I'm very happy that the Dutch episode is full of ideas, not only to reinforce the debate, but also to instruct the new episodes with the south of Europe and with questions that I'm gonna use for the next conversations. I would love to thank especially Margot Curto from the Consul General of the Netherlands in Milano, and the cultural attaché of the Dutch Embassy in Rome, Bas Ernst, that have been very helpful. But we do have a question at the moment. I know it's it's a message to say thank you. And actually it's from Katrin Oswald-Richter, the director of the Goethe Institute Mailand, that she was one of the first co-host of the meeting. If the guests, you don't have any other comments, I would like to end this. Thanking you very much, and tell you that we are gonna continue this conversation also with you, because we want to transform this series of conversation not only as a digital format but as a publication for the next spring. So Madeleine von Leppen, Timo de Rech, Jeroen van der Eyden, and Marina Otero-Verzier, apologize for my horrible Dutch pronunciation. Consul General, thank you very much for staying with us here at Triennale Milano.